Hello everyone. In this video, let's tune into Saturn in Aries. So Saturn entered Aries just a couple days ago. I want to speak to the essential evolutionary meaning of this signature. What are some of the challenges and dynamics that will be arising for all of us with this transit, and their greater healing and evolutionary meaning and potential in this transit? Saturn is going to soon move retrograde, so it's approaching a very powerful initiatory transitional time. It's going to do this with Neptune. They're both going to move back into Pisces and then come back into Aries. So this isn't just Saturn in Aries, this is the beginning of a transitional window. We're at the foothills. So we can say all of these lessons are really beginning to emerge in the collective consciousness in a powerful way. And of course, since we're involving Neptune, everything that I speak to has to be understood in that context. So at the end of this video, I'll bring it all together and add the context of Neptune. There are so many important dimensions to unpack here. I'm excited about this. I'm looking forward to continuing to delve into the wisdom and the nuance of Saturn in Aries, and even sharing really rich discussions on this. So before I do, a couple announcements. One, I'm wearing glasses. This is because I have an eye issue and looking at light is excruciatingly painful. Couple work announcements. You'll see on my website that I have a couple new classes available. A few months ago, I finished teaching a series on planets that square the lunar nodes. I taught the meaning of each planet in its square to the nodes, what the issues are, how to understand its evolutionary potential, how to work it out. These were very in-depth classes. There's a free intro class that I highly recommend where I go through the basic technique, the philosophy, the meaning of this particular configuration, and how to work it out. So you can check all of this on my website. And my first year training program is closed, but the self-study is open for enrollment all year long. This is an opportunity to study evolutionary astrology through my lens, through my teaching, at your own pace, and you can always upgrade to join a live cohort every year when that begins. Okay, let's get started. Saturn, in its essence, is always about getting stronger. To get stronger means facing the limits, the edge of where we are not yet strong. Strength training on every level means putting forth effort. And it means discipline. You can't put forward effort towards one thing a little bit and then expect meaningful growth. So the journey of Saturn is always a clarification and a grounding of our life force energy towards meaningful purpose that is worth long-term discipline and effort. When we look at Saturn in Aries, we're disciplining, training, and directing our instinctual masculine energy. Essentially, what are we here to lead? What is our purpose in life? That Aries energy is raw, it's instinctive, it's wild, it's innately untamed. So Saturn in Aries wants to direct that. And there are several dimensions that I want to explore. I'll begin with this teaching. Being that everything worthwhile requires effort, I want to make a very important Saturn and Aries distinction between two very opposite paradigms. And this is really a lie for all of us right now. One is the pain that comes for working for a goal, wanting to achieve success, wanting to make a positive change in your life. The stress of that change isn't just in the work, it's all the things you have to let go of to make it work. If you're going to achieve this, then your time's going to be directed towards that. It's not going to be directed towards all those other things. Most of the pain and growth is in the psychological motivation and effort that we make to persist and not fall into unnecessary, unuseful patterns and habits. Then there's often physical pain. There's the experience of doing something, but that's actually quite rewarding. Like the experience of pushing through an obstacle itself is so incredibly rewarding, and that it kind of entrains the brain to do that more. And all things Saturn, the more we do it, the more we entrain these patterns, the more psychologically posed we become to actually continue to do more of that. So the stronger you get, the stronger you can get, and the stronger even more so that you can get. But this is different than another Saturn and Aries paradigm, which is a lot of hard, stressful work to no meaningful purpose or direction. It's sort of an energy of self-defeating. It's the example of the person that's working very hard, showing up for their job, doing back-breaking physical labor, needing to repress a whole lot of their own impulses. I can't say no, I can't scream, I can't curse, I can't challenge the authority, I'll be fired. A lot of repression because I got to get the job done. And this really brings up this distorted patriarchal model that is very common in the world, and it deludes us how common it is, meaning it's so much the world that we're in, we're not aware of it. Where repression and sacrifice, even if it's hard and stressful and you're absolutely miserable, is worth it. How often do we see that spoken about with parenting? Of course, you want to parent, you're going to sacrifice and let go of so much for your kids. But there's almost like this celebrated model of the stressed out, undersourced, working hard, I got to hold a lot of my own personal needs back, parental archetype. Or just the archetypal father figure, but this could be any gender, that's sacrificing, working hard, even sacrificing their life for the sake of supporting society or doing the good thing. Saturn and Aries, fighting in a war. You might get killed, but you're heroic. Your heroicism is sort of celebrated, right? Your stoicism, your ability to do hard work and possibly sacrifice yourself is celebrated when you're serving what society has told you to be worthwhile. We then value ourselves. We judge ourselves. I'm a good person because I'm doing the right thing for this external cause, even though I'm stressed and I'm unhappy and I'm not well. But I'm a good person. In the United States, for example, in different countries, this is very different. I think this is very much modeled in how most places, especially on the federal level, but most states will regard parental leave. Very short parental leave for mothers, very little, if probably none, as far as I'm aware, for fathers. There are European countries that are more socialized, that respect wellness and health and families, that will actually give a paid leave, long paid leave. Taxes cover family wellness. But that's not the model that we live in here in the US. So this is like a good example that Saturn and Aries. You have to get back to work quickly. You have to be strong enough and make it work. And if you can make it work, you're celebrated. But to what cost? So I'm going to start with kind of bringing forward that dichotomy. And this is the dichotomy between hard work, which is worth it, and the weight and the pressure of actually not being self-defined. The roles that we fall into and the stresses of life that are very hard for us, that push us down, that take our vitality and our life away from us, which is really the alternative to not embracing the healthy definition of deciding, this is who I'm going to become. This is what I'm going to work on. This is what I'm going to improve and discipline in my life. The lack of that means we become weighted down. And this can really, it is. I mean, there's such an endemic of depression in this world, especially thinking of just the archetypal Saturn Aries archetype, in particular to men. Because men as a archetype are not taught to take care of themselves. And this is something that I'm deeply trying to unravel right now. I think a lot of men are. To take care of ourselves is almost shamed. You have to do and play a role, and anything else is like wrong. It's selfish. So there's a lot of deconditioning that's required and is happening and will continue to happen with Saturn and Aries. Now, this will definitely speak to core gender condition dynamics, but it's archetypal and it's universal and it's relevant for all of us. A story comes to mind. So there's a time several years ago where I made the choice to go to China to spend a short time at a Taoist temple. And there's a lot of hurdles, like the visa, my finances, things were very difficult and tight. And it was feeling like getting there was very effortful. So I was kind of verging on, maybe I'll just let go of this. I wrote an email to the coordinator there, and she responded saying, and I said, it's not feeling like it's flowing. Things feel very effortful. Maybe it's just not aligned. Very, it's a very common spiritual language. It's not in flow. It's not aligned. And there's truth to that frame, right? But she responded and she said something that was very helpful. She said, there's often this notion in spiritual community or in spiritual thinking that if it's not easy, then we shouldn't do it. Some things simply require effort. That's a part of the spiritual path. And that was powerful because that actually invited me to make this trip a choice. Or maybe it was sort of, I want to do this, but it wasn't a clear, determined choice because things were happening and I was easily just giving up on it. Once it became a choice, I got there, made it work, and it was a hard experience, the entire thing, but I grew immensely from it. So let me offer a few other perspectives on Saturn and Aries. So this first one is that dichotomy between the weight of sacrifice and real meaningful hard work. The other is this. There's a calling for maturation. In the most regressive, unrefined, unconscious way, we have the archetype of sort of the typical toxic, masculine, I'm going to take and do whatever I want because I'm entitled. And that's the immature expression of that Saturn energy. It's like a child, but in an adult form. So Saturn wants us to mature, but what's the immature? For Saturn to be anywhere implies maturation, right? That's the intention, which implies an existing state of immaturity. So for many souls, this can be bringing up personally and collectively this warlike, dictator-like entitlement to be the boss. I'm the one making the choices. I'm the leader. And this can become incredibly chauvinistic if we're bringing it into a gender context. It can be very dominating, very violent, very controlling in any context. In this psychology, there is a lack of Saturn ethical knowledge. I mean, we're not attuned to or aware of the effects of our actions. It's just all about us and what we want to do. Now, the issue, what makes this really hard, this is an important point. Saturn is hard to unravel, and becoming aware of conditioned patterns is hard to unravel because it's conditioned, meaning anything that's conditioned until there's self-awareness is literally the ocean that we're swimming in. For it to be unconditioned means there's some sort of agency and awareness that's at some point become aware of the fact of being conditioned. Until that awareness, we're just playing out, this is how it is, this is how men are, this is how women are, this is who I'm supposed to be. And usually it's because we grew up with some sort of imprinting that taught us that. Now, from an evolutionary soul perspective, there's a reason for why each of us have the life that we have, that we come into the context that we've come into. There can be anger and rage and personal ambition that you're repressing, but wait, I'm not allowed to. So let's say you're a woman. It's not okay for me to express that. Let's flip that. You could also be conditioned being told, as a man, you cannot misuse this energy. It's really important that you don't hurt anyone with it, that you're not sexually inappropriate, you don't express your aggression. Men have caused a lot of violence towards the world, towards women. And so then this becomes another point of confusion. What do you do with those masculine impulses? You might actually have a very strong, ambitious nature that you're repressing, and then you feel a lot of shame and guilt about it. So this brings up, within the context of social conditioning, where there can be a whole lot of distortion relative to what is repressed. The other side to that immature child that will do whatever they want is the adult that's afraid to step into their own agency and power and command because it's wrong. It's inappropriate. I'm going to offend someone. I'll say the wrong thing. The thing is, we need to be able to define our own authority. For all of us, this will mean facing where society has judgments. Saturn, I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be canceled. I don't want to be told that I'm a bad person. At the core of it is the fear of being a bad person. So when what is natural is repressed, it creates an immense amount of distortion. All kinds of physical, sexual, psychological, and just like human needs for goals, for challenge, for confrontation, for pushing beyond obstacles, that's a need. And when that isn't met, or when it's displaced onto someone else or the opposite gender, it creates an immense amount of distortion. It could be manifesting external forms of violence manifesting towards us in our life. It could be this uncontrolled rage inside of us that doesn't have an outlet. Again, this becomes sort of it's synonymous to that self-defeating, destructive, I'm going to work very hard, but be stressed out. as we claim our own purpose and our own will and our own agency, we also get in touch with our anger, with our shame, with our guilt. Well, if I'm going to become successful, I have to actually put myself out there. Oh, but that's wrong. That's wrong. So this is a big part of Saturn in Aries. I think it's also important to say anything Saturn requires a safe container. You don't just unravel your conditioning or your shame or your fear or your guilt or your, fear of being violated or fear that you will violate someone else. These are deep dynamics. They're real, but you can't necessarily deal with it or just express it with everyone because they're gentle, they're tender, and they trigger some of the deepest conditioning and places of shame and fear and disappointment within all of us. So it's important that we create the right kind of structures in society. This is the thing that we lack. Saturn in Aries, we don't have initiation practices for teenagers to work through these things and actually learn how to come into alignment. More men need to be hanging out with men. This is one of those things with Saturn in Aries. We have to face the ways in which the masculine archetype in general has feared its own needs to have containment and support. And without that kind of containment and support, it doesn't have an outlet. I can deal with it alone, right? And there's truth to that sort of archetype of Aries, work it out. But there needs to be a space of community and support. And I think Saturn in Aries is going to bring an emergence, and I'm already seeing it. So a lot of kind of restoration and healing of how do we heal masculine energy, right? How do we come into right relationship where we're actually claiming it and working on it and are using it for meaningful purpose that is activating and meaningful in our own lives that brings benefit to the world, but not like this old school sacrificial and I'm alone, I got to hold it all and have nowhere to put it. So that's a big part of this dynamic. The final thing that I want to speak to with Saturn and Aries is just depression. When everything is distorted, it can create a lot of depression. The depression happens when we're living a life and we're just not in touch with our own ability to make a different choice than the one that we got. I mean, depression can express on many different levels for many different reasons. I'm not wanting to simplify it. Relative to Saturn and Aries, it's like I can't do anything else than what I'm doing. I don't have the power to make a different choice. And so if depression's arising right now, I really want to offer strongly, because of this transit, especially because they're moving retrograde soon, that this is probably the threshold for a powerful change. There might be a blossoming realization of changes that you can make in your own life. The point is only you can make them. What kind of support do you need? How can you support and discipline this change with the kind of structures that will actually help you along? The immaturity of Saturn and Aries wants to think you can do it all by yourself right now and get it done. It's like going to the gym for the first time and just doing whatever you want. But that will lead to a lot of possible injuries, and it just won't be the right way to condition your muscles. So the immature approach to anything new is just kind of do it. The matured approach is to take your time, to study it, to get support, to get help. And that's a big part of what wants to happen with the Saturn in Aries. That feels like a really good starting point for introducing the Saturn in Aries transit. I'll close by giving context to Neptune. There's a lot to say. I've been speaking a lot, but now I'm really zeroing in on the Saturn Aries archetype. So here's one context I'll offer. All of this happening in the context of Neptune means all of the conditioning, the ways that we've been training ourselves and that we've been trained to act and behave, the repression, the fear, the shame, the guilt, the immaturity, it's all falling away. Which means we might be facing on a deeper existential level, what is my purpose? What am I here to do? It might actually induce a deep sense of despair, emptiness, nihilism, depression, because something more meaningful is emerging, and that meaning is coming from our direct co-creative agency to choose and connect with higher meaning and to take command for it in our own life. There also, just simply as I've spoken, might be a dissolving of the structures that we've built up, the forms that we've been, strengthening. I am this powerful person, powerful woman, man, this is the forms. And it might be just a lot of old school conditioning that needs to fall away so we can actually access a quality of being that is beyond being a man, beyond being a woman, it's an interesting duality, because I think for many souls, there might be this need to actually embrace one's femininity, one's masculinity, in the context of embracing what is natural and biological for them, right? Like not repressing, oh, I'm a man, but I don't want to be cisgendered bias. And if this is who you are and this is how you feel, if this is your nature, you have to embrace that and use that. It doesn't mean everyone else has to be like you, and you're not shaming or hurting others. So there can be a forgiveness of like letting yourself be who you are, almost bringing a sort of spirituality to what looks like a more traditional expression of being, but it's actually just allowing what's natural roles and expressions to come about. But the very opposite can be true, right? If it's like overly identified with these roles and structures, Neptune is like, you are not this body, you are not this form, you are not these roles, you are not these genders. None of that is who you are. Let go and allow for a deeper truth to inspire you. So both of these can be true at the same time. The whole point with Saturn Neptune is we're not really identified with the form. For me, it's been a very powerful learning, and it's been real for me, and I'm sure for many of you as well, to not spiritualize away what I'm needing now. Needing more sleep. Well, I should be able to get less sleep, right? But if my body needs more sleep, that's actually true. The human needs and the desires that we have, they're there. And I think a mature stance on the spiritual path is knowing how to integrate them consciously, not repressing them on the basis of trying to be some kind of ideal, matured spiritual version of ourselves, actually learning to embrace it so we can grow and mature from where we are, not create all kinds of repressed dynamics, which we got to come back to it eventually. All right, and this completes this teaching. Check out my offerings in the description below. I also have a newsletter that I will often write along with these video teachings, and you can also book a session with me. I offer one-on-one sessions, relationship readings, and long-term soul-to-soul companionship sessions, which are bulk sessions that are discounted as well. Thank you so much for watching.